Hello and welcome to Scientific Supplement Reviews. My name is Dr. Lukas Stadler and I'm a research scientist at the University of Cambridge. Nutritional supplements are everywhere these days and they promise you better health, better looks, more energy and a longer life. But how do you know which supplements actually work and which are a waste of money? Well, I'm here to review the scientific evidence behind supplements and to share my findings with you. Thank you for watching. In today's video, I will review Echinacea supplements. Echinacea is a plant-based supplement and it is popular for its purported immune-boosting properties. Specifically, Echinacea is commonly taken with the aim of preventing and treating upper respiratory tract infections, such as the common cold. Here, I will review the scientific evidence to see if Echinacea really works. If you're squeezed for time, there's also a shorter version of this video which provides a brief summary of the main scientific findings. The link to that video is in the description below. Now let's get to it. Let's start with some background and talk first about where this supplement comes from. Echinacea is the name given to a group of 10 closely related flower species, which are more commonly known as the cone flowers. Their natural habitat is in parts of the USA and Canada, and the Echinacea species that is most commonly used in dietary supplements is the purple-colored Echinacea purpurea. To go from the Echinacea plant to an ingestible product, various processing methods exist. There's no consensus on which part of the plant should be used, with various products containing either the flower, the leaves, or the roots of the plant. Often all three of these are combined. The various plant components can then be dried and ground into small pieces, at which point they can be infused with hot water to consume as a drink, or they are further processed to produce Echinacea in tablet or droplet form. In accordance with its natural habitat, Echinacea's use for medicinal purposes was first reported amongst Native Americans, with the earliest archaeological evidence dating back to the 18th century. Information about the use of the plant from traditional healers ranges from external applications for wounds, burns, and insect bites, to the chewing of roots for toothache and throat infections. Around the year 1880, the first commercial Echinacea product hit the market and was given the brand name Meyer's Blood Purifier, a term reminiscent of the snake oil quackery that was prevalent in the American West at the time. By the middle of the last century, Echinacea extract had become a popular supplement for the treatment and prevention of the common cold across Europe and in particular the German-speaking world. However, for a long time the evidence for Echinacea's effectiveness was purely anecdotal, and rigorous clinical studies have only been conducted relatively recently. So, without further ado, let's delve straight into the scientific literature and ask if there is any evidence to show that Echinacea is effective in the prevention and or the treatment of the common cold and upper respiratory tract infections in general. As in previous scientific reviews, we shall primarily draw on so-called meta-analyses when reviewing this topic, as these studies pull together the results from multiple clinical trials and thus allow us to gain an overview of the scientific literature. This meta-analysis from 2007 included 14 different clinical studies in its analysis and looked at two parameters. Firstly, the effect of Echinacea supplementation on preventing the common cold, and secondly, the effect on duration of the common cold. Now, looking first at the results for the prevention of the common cold, we are presented with this graph. This type of graph is known as a forest plot, and I want to briefly explain how to interpret it. Each of the black squares represents the result of an individual clinical study, and the white diamond at the bottom represents the combined results of all studies. If the diamond and its error bars, as represented by the black line going through the diamond, lie to the left of this vertical line and do not overlap with it, then that indicates that the treatment under investigation, in this case Echinacea, exerts a statistically significant effect on the parameter under investigation, in this case, prevention of the common cold. So, following that principle, we can conclude that, according to this particular meta-analysis, Echinacea supplementation seems to reduce the likelihood of catching the common cold. In percentage terms, this works out as 86% reduction in the incidence of the common cold. Now, looking at the ability of Echinacea supplementation to reduce the duration of the common cold, Once an individual has caught it, this study again finds Echinacea to be effective. Expressed as average duration of the cold in days, this works out as Echinacea supplementation reducing the duration of the common cold on average by 1.3 days compared to the placebo group. These results on the face of it sound very promising. However, upon closer inspection of these results, an important caveat emerges. Specifically, it turns out that in some of the studies whose results were included in this meta-analysis, the treatment arm of the clinical trial did not just include Echinacea, but also other components, such as vitamin C. Now, this is potentially problematic, as vitamin C has itself been floated as a potential treatment of the common cold, and as such may be confounding the results from these studies. Indeed, the authors of this meta-analysis report that when they remove those studies from the analysis where additional substances alongside the Echinacea were used, then the beneficial effect on duration of the cold disappears. Now let's look at another, much more recent meta-analysis asking exactly the same question as the previous paper I presented. Does Echinacea supplementation reduce the occurrence and duration of upper respiratory tract infections, of which the common cold is the most common? Looking first at the ability of Echinacea to reduce the occurrence of upper respiratory tract infections, or URTIs for short, the authors of this meta-analysis report that across a total of 9 independent clinical studies, there is a slight preventative effect of Echinacea compared to placebo. With regards to the effect of Echinacea on the duration of URTIs, this meta-analysis finds no difference between Echinacea and placebo. And finally, this study also looks at adverse effects associated with Echinacea supplementation and finds that it is as safe as placebo across a large number of clinical trials included in the analysis. The authors of this meta-analysis conclude that, whilst Echinacea appears to be safe in the short term, the claims that preparations of this plant can reduce the incidence or duration of URTIs remains to be convincingly shown. Now, let's look at one more meta-analysis. And in this case, we are looking at a pretty authoritative source, namely the Cochrane Library, which is a database entirely dedicated to meta-analyses. Many of the official guidelines issued to doctors are based on the findings from these studies. In the interest of brevity, I shall not show any more forest plots and simply state the overall findings of this meta-analysis. With regards to prevention of contracting the common cold, the authors find: taken together, results from prevention trials suggest that a number of Echinacea products slightly reduce the risk of getting a cold in healthy individuals. With regards to treating the common cold in order to reduce its duration in someone who already has the illness, the authors report the overall evidence for clinically relevant treatment effects over placebo is weak. The authors also discuss a number of factors that may potentially render an already weak effect of Echinacea supplementation even weaker. Firstly, they state that they are aware of several unpublished clinical trials that showed no effect of Echinacea supplementation. We are thus faced with a possible publication bias, whereby studies that have positive findings are more likely to be published than those that do not find an effect, thus skewing the results of a meta-analysis in favor of the product under investigation. Secondly, the authors point out that several of the studies investigated use Echinacea products that have additional bioactive ingredients in them, thus potentially confounding the effect of Echinacea alone. So, having reviewed the scientific literature, we are left with the all-important question: is Echinacea supplementation worth it? Well, if I had to deliver a verdict based on everything I have read, I would conclude that there is some evidence that Echinacea supplementation may slightly reduce the chances of catching the common cold in a small proportion of people taking it. Whether this small effect is clinically meaningful, however, is uncertain at this point. An additional complicating factor to note is the fact that there is no industry standard for the manufacture of Echinacea supplements, with various Echinacea products containing different parts of the plant, as well as different additives. It is thus difficult to ascertain which product, if any, one should choose to maximize the chances of a protective effect. With regards to Echinacea supplementation having a treatment effect in upper respiratory tract infections, in other words, does it reduce the duration of a cold in those people who have already caught it, there is no evidence to support this. So there you have it. I hope you have enjoyed this scientific supplement review of Echinacea, and I hope it will help you make an informed choice when deciding as to whether you want to purchase and use Echinacea supplements in the future. Thank you for watching. please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments of any other supplements you would like me to review.